past decade has seen the rise in all-in-one amp-in-a-box modelers that revolutionise and kind of change the way that guitarists think about amps and effects. It's more and more common these days to see a guitarist roll up with just a single box and a guitar and produce all of their super cool tones just from the one unit. That's why I'm very excited to show you today the brand new Fender Tone Master Pro. Now, anyone who knows their history knows that Fender are no strangers to the amp world. In fact, Leo Fender is actually maybe a bit more of an amp guy, if anything, rather than a guitar guy. He actually got his career starting out making PAs for local bands, which is pretty cool. Their amps are used all over the world, and no doubt if you've been to any gig, played a gig, been to any sort of practice room or anything, you'll have no doubt interacted with a Fender amp maybe at some point in your life. Think the Blues Junior, Hot Rod DeVille, Deluxe Reverb. These iconic amps are used by pretty much everybody, it would seem, if you look at any stage over the world. With such a rich history in the amp game, it's absolutely no surprise that Fender have entered the chat when it comes to pro-level modelers. Now, this isn't their first sort of foray into the digital amp world. They do actually have a range of amps out right now called the Mustang series, which, if anybody's experienced with them, they are very, very popular. The Tone Master Pro takes this to a completely different level. Now, as always, we have split this video into chapters, so if there's a particular section that you do want to see about the new Tone Master Pro, then do feel free to have a look. I would say sit in, grab yourself a little snack and a drink of water, because we've got quite a lot to cover in this, so let's just dive right in. Now, spec-wise, I'm going to touch on a few things with the Tone Master Pro, but I will preface it by saying if you do really want to get into the weeds and read the kind of proper technical sort of information about it, then click the link in the description. That'll take you to our website where all that information is there. I'm just going to kind of cover some of the important parts. Size-wise, the Tone Master Pro, it's certainly not the chunkiest unit that is available, but by no means is it, in any way sort of a super compact version. There is a Boss Compact pedal just to kind of get a reference for size right next to it, but it actually only comes in at under £9 as well, so it's not going to break your back to transport this thing around. The unit itself has a very kind of clear and minimal UI with its 10 knobs down the bottom, which are all rotary knobs, which I'll touch on just in a little bit. Has a 7-inch full color touchscreen there as well. Super easy to kind of see anything, which again, I'll show you a few sort of different view modes that you can use if you're kind of gigging with this, or if you do need to get into change any of the presets. Flanking the screen, we have these two knobs just on the left and right there as well. The one on the left will change your preset, and the one on the right controls your master volume that's coming out of it, and also if you push it, you can get into a mixer within the Tone Master Pro, which is a really cool feature. Again, touch on that just a little bit later. Looking at the back, we have a plethora of IOs, which will suit you for any sort of situation. From left to right, we have our instrument and line inputs, 4 effects loops to use your own favorite pedals with the unit, XLR and 2 1/4-inch stereo outputs, 3.5mm aux in, headphone input, 2 expression inputs, a toe switch and amp control, as well as a micro SD input to play backing tracks from, USB-C and MIDI input and output. There's also Bluetooth functionality to play backing tracks, as well as the micro SD. While we're here as well, can we just take a moment to admire the little red amp jewel that Fender have put on this, which, is the same that they put on their amps as well. Super classy little touch there. So with obviously these kind of digital modelers, there is a lot of amps and effects that are in it. So unless this video was going to be 3 hours long, I'm not going to be able to touch on every single one. But what I will go through is a couple of patches that I've made that kind of cover some of the basic sounds that are in here. some of the effects in there as well I've got in the chain just to kind of show you the scope of that. I'll also talk you through how to actually make a preset from scratch as well. So we'll go through the list and sort of see what the Tone Master Pro has to offer. So maybe the kind of main selling point, I guess, of the Fender Tone Master Pro here is, as you'd expect with it, you know, being a Fender product, it has all those iconic Fender clean amps in it. You know, think the Deluxe Reverb, the Super Reverb, even things like the Blues Junior and stuff have been modeled. So anybody who is a super fan of those, you're gonna get on really well with this modeler. And obviously with this being a pro level modeler as well, it does have some amps that are, you know, kind of based on some of those sounds that are in the Tone Hall of Fame, you know, kind of British sounding amps, American sounding high gains, all that sort of stuff. Now, one of the coolest things about the Tone Master Pro as well is that it does have officially branded EVH 5150 tones in it, because for those who may not know, EVH is under that Fender umbrella. So just to think that some of the sounds that are in there, especially the 5150, has been, you know, worked on with people who make those amps, is a pretty cool little feature. And just to know that, you know, the people who are actually putting in the work are the people who make those amps and are trying to make those sounds as, you know, realistic and kind of close to the real thing as possible. So worth going back to what I mentioned as well, with this left knob here that can control which preset you're actually dialing through, there is another function that you can push this, and it actually has a gig view. So basically it'll just have a much larger indication of what the preset that you're on is without kind of seeing the chain. So if you're playing any stages that are quite dark, or you need it just to, you know, be very, very clear what you're on, then you're going to really enjoy Gig View on this. So let me take you through a couple of the presets that I have made on the Tone Master Pro. Now, you are going to be hearing all of these sounds direct. We've got the Tone Master Pro going stereo into our interface, and I actually, in the room as well, I'm using the Tone Master Pro FR12 cab, which it's got this really cool kind of Hot Rod DeVille look to it. It's got a couple of EQ features as well for you just to hear, you know, if you do want to shape it via this cab. But all the sounds you are going to be hearing are totally direct from the unit. I'm also using my trusty Shure Classic S HSS guitar here, just so I can get a full plethora of tones as well. So the first patch that we'll touch on is this one that I've called Multi here. Now, what I've done with this is basically just to show you some of the features that you can use with the Tone Master Pro in terms of having multiple amps on one chain. Now, I'm going to switch just over to footswitch mode there, and you'll see this is now the internal of the patch. When you're off of that there, here is all the patches that you can switch between. When you hit that footswitch mode there, you go into the actual kind of guts of the preset. So this is what you would use, obviously, if you want to kind of, you know, use your effects or do some switching, which I will show you just now how cool this is. So what I've got going on is on my top patch here, our top line of buttons, I've got all the controls for the pedals that are built in with this. What I've done in the bottom here, this, I don't know if you can see on the scribble strip there, it does say amps. What basically I've got going on is I've got a clean with a digital delay and a large plate reverb after it. But when I hit this button, it will switch over to my distorted tone, which you'll hear in a second. It's an EVH 5150 with a tube screamer in the front. So the clean tone. So just with that patch, it does show the power of the unit, even just for a kind of small one there, that you can immediately switch between, you know, your clean tone with a couple of effects on it, and then your distorted tone again with as many effects as you kind of want on it. The way that I have done that, now there is a couple of options down the bottom here that, you know, go into kind of more detail into exactly what they do, but this is a really good opportunity to show you this foot switch assign button here. So when you hit into here, you'll notice you have all of these plus signs above each of the knobs, obviously, that will control things on the unit. When you get into it, you can assign exactly what that does. You can even change the color of the, you know, the button just to make it a bit clearer for yourself. So it's fully customizable. You can have the color of it inactive, active. You can have a latch-in or a momentary switch. You can even change, you know, the name on the scribble strip there if you want it to be a bit more personal to yourself. Now, the most important one on this patch certainly is when I hit the amps function. You'll notice here that there is multiple things happening on the one switch. So basically what this is doing is this is activating the digital delay, the large plate, and the clean amp when it is off, and when I hit it, it switches all those three off and then actually activates the distorted amp, which is the 5150, and then it'll activate the tube screamer as well. So just within the one patch, you can kind of have your full rig, you know, without having to switch between different actual, you know, hardwired patches. You can keep it all contained within the one unit. And also with that as well, I have noticed, you know, that it's quite fast sort of switching between them, so you're not going to have any sort of lag, which is really cool. And you can also, with all the other effects actually, you know, assigned to these other ones here, say for example, I'm on the distorted tone here, and I want to bring in the delay, you can do that too, because obviously I've assigned it to just that switch there. And then when I hit it back, it will just go back to my clean tone. Moving on to our next patch here, we have the UK30 based amp, and I have added an extra couple of effects into the chain. What I want to show with this patch particularly is the sort of like signal chain and the different options you could have for that. So if you hit the instrument title just there on the touch screen, you'll notice that it brings up kind of a few different signal paths that you can do. You can either have just it in series, you can have it in parallel at a point, you can have two parallels, you can have an instrument, mic and line series, and a couple of extra ones there. Just not anything completely essential for you to get a sound, but it just gives you much more customizable features. So what I've got going on is my signal path, there's a distortion pedal, into the amp, into a delay, into the reverb, and then it splits into a tremolo and then a shimmer, just so that they aren't affecting each other, and this is what it sounds like. Along with this as well, I do have, as I said, the kind of tube overdrive, which is sort of based on the valve driver. I've got it set in kind of quite a warm sort of overdrive as well. So. Now on just to the next one that I have created as well. This is going for more of kind of a obnoxious 80s lead here with the rodent pedal, which I'm no guessing to what that's based off of. We have our American sort of Mesa style here. Throwing a chorus just in between the amp and the cab just to get like a really kind of wild sort of 80s chorusy sound. We have our cab, we have a digital delay, and then the large plate reverb as well. Now again, I'll go through the lists of all the different sort of effects and amps very, very briefly within this video. I just seem to kind of fall onto these, you know, the large plate particularly is a favourite of mine, so I've used it on quite a few of these patches. Another quite interesting thing that I have done on this patch as well, so here's just our full-blown sort of, you know, lead tone here. But what I have set one of these foot switches to is actually to adjust the gain on the amp. So When it's lit up like this, it's full gain. I can turn that down to orange, which again I've set just in the foot switches sign. Can even turn off the distortion there. And we're almost getting a bit more of a kind of, you know, pushed overdrive sort of clean tone here. And then you can kick it right back in. So not just the fact that you can obviously throw on quite a few different changes for pedals or settings just within your foot switches here, but even the fact that you can jump into kind of parameter changes and stuff just gives you sort of full flexibility for however much you want to do. You can even get into the amp control, change any of the settings, you know, like treble, bass, any of your EQ. Even stuff like the sort of EQ pattern of the cab and stuff you can get in and you can assign them to any of your foot switches, which sort of gives you just unlimited flexibility to really shape your tone. The next patch that I've created as well is more of just a full-blown sort of metal sound where I've got a 5150 on the red, oh no, it's the blue channel, sorry, going into this Freeman V30 cabinet now. I'll give you just a very quick look into the cabinet section here as well. So what you do is obviously you click on your amp. You have all your options there. As I said, these are all rotary knobs that you can change in real time and you'll see those all changing on the amp, which gives it a very sort of, you know, sort of immediate user sort of response to it, that you know something is changing. You'll be able to hear that as well as turning a knob. So it's very much like a real amp if anybody does like that. Now, if you do want to get in and change any of the options on your cab, just hit the cabinet in the top right there. This will then bring up your options for where you want to put your mic. So you've got 4 areas on the speaker where you can put them: the cap edge, the cone, or the cone edge. And then all of these positions here are basically the distance away from the speaker. So as you would imagine, going down to the cap here, it's going to be your most trebly. Over there on the cone edge, as far away from it, that's going to be your most kind of obviously bassy sound. Along with your option to change the cab, some options there. You've also got few mics that you can go through as well, or all your kind of main hitters when it comes to actually getting, you know, miking up live amps. You've got the option to put it on an off or an on axis, low cut filter and the high cut filter as well. And we've got that kind of down to a 9.1 there as well, just to soothe off some of those high ends. This patch as well kind of shows you how sort of severe the gate can be as well with it, as well as I do have a pitch shifter on this as well that I am running the Mission Fender Tone Master official expression pedal that's just plugged into the back here. I've got it set that the whammy will go on and off with the switch here, but there is a toe press option on it as well if you prefer that kind of more old school sort of feel with it. The next patch I'm going to look into is kind of the more British plexi sounding one that I've dialed into here, and there's a couple of kind of cool functions that I have set this one up with as well. So pull that up, you can see the interface for the plexi there, very kind of standard for anyone who's familiar with these amps. Now, one of the kind of cooler things that I have done with this patch is that I've set each volume, which is technically considered your gain with the plexi, to these 2 switches down the bottom. So with just volume 1 on, and I've got just a little bit of spring reverb as well after here just to give it some space. So but when I sort of switch on the next switch here, this will initiate the second volume from 0 all the way to 100, which you get that really kind of pushed plexi tone. I've got a blues maker here, which is kind of your blues breaker, Marshall pedal sound, as well as setting a wah to the expression pedal as well. So let's check that out. And it does actually kind of clean up as well when you obviously roll your volume knob down on your guitar a bit, which is cool. It gives you that proper sort of, reaction that you would expect from one of these amps, which just goes to show how kind of cool the amp sounds are in here. Obviously, on that last patch that I had with the more modern metal-y sort of sound, there was no subtleties when it comes to your dynamics with that. It just goes to show if you do want more of a reactive sort of like amp sound out of it, it is rather easy to dial that in and really get like quite a cool sound out of the Tone Master Pro. Now, moving on just to our last patch that I have made here. This one, very, very clean. It is kind of based on a solid state jazz chorus here. Got a studio compressor on, a flanger, and then a tremolo as well. So could say it's sort of Johnny Marr light, but it's meant to be just that super pristine, pushed sort of clean sound. So one thing I think that Fender have aimed to do with the Tone Master Pro is essentially make it just a little bit of an easier stepping in kind of point for anybody who's maybe not as familiar with modelers. Now, obviously modelers have been around for quite a while at this point. That sort of barrier to entry can be a bit intimidating for people, and no surprise because they are quite advanced bits of kit. Certainly a lot more complicated than plugging directly into an amp, which a lot of people maybe have been super familiar with. So we'll show you how to just make one of those patches in here, starting with the amp, adding some pedals, adding them to the foot switches, and also just show you some of the lists of the amps and effects that we've got. Now, at time of recording, the Tone Master Pro has got the ability to store 504 presets. So unless you're making several new patches every single day for a year, I can't see anybody completely maxing that out. So lots of room for different sounds, lots of rooms to actually be able to download patches from the Fender Tone Cloud as well, which is really cool. So if anybody's making any presets that you do want directly, you can download them via the app that you can plug into your computer. There's also a desktop editor as well, which might make it just easier for some people just to make some patches. So there's a couple of different options for you to actually put any amp or effect into the chain. You'll notice these plus symbols just on your chain here as well, next to your instrument and output here. The easiest way I've found is just hitting this add block button just down at the bottom here. Now you'll have a node just to add. You click on that, this will then give you your ability to choose anything that you want. So let's just start with the amp. As expected, you've got quite a lot of options for your Fender amps. 65 reverb, 65 Princeton, 65 super reverb, twin reverb. You've got some bass breakers in there. JC Clean, UK 30, which we've already heard. Fender Vibro King, a couple of British options, the 800 and the Plexi, which is going to be your more kind of high gain JCM 800. Then the Plexi, the double rec there, which very much based off of a Mesa Boogie dual rec. You've also got the 3 channels of the AVH 5150 300 watt, which is the green, the blue, and the red. The FBE 100, kind of a modded Marshall Friedman sound, and then your Uber is kind of going for that super high gain diesel tone. So let's keep this kind of nice and simple. Let's go with 65 Twin. You'll see that just pop right into your chain right there, and off the bat, let's click on that and just see what it's all set to. So it's pretty standard sort of sound. Now, one thing you can do when you are on the amp screens here is you can actually, on some of them, there is the option to click to a different page. So much like all the actual Fender amps, they'll come loaded with a reverb and a vibrato on them as well. So, or tremolo, depending on which one you want to call it. But what you can do, instead of swiping over or hitting that button there, you can hit just the page option here. There's your options for the trem. You can head back. Also, you've got your reverb as well. Bright switch, much like a proper twin reverb. You've got all your EQ. And all the interface stuff actually changes in real time as well, which again, just quite a cool sort of visual stimulant for the modeler as well. Just it makes it just that little bit more fun to interact with. As I mentioned as well, you can get in, you can change your cab, you can change your mic. We'll just keep it quite similar as it is. For all of those amps, they are paired with their sort of corresponding cab as well. We've got a 1x10 in the Princeton, a couple of 1x12s. Moving on to the 2x12s, then there is a 3x10 actually as well with a Vibro King, which is quite cool. 4x10, which is meant to be your super reverb, and then a plethora of different mic'd or different speaker loaded 4x12s there, which, you know, you can change the mic, as I was sort of trying to say there. So now we've got our amp, let's add a couple of effects to this as well. So we go back to our add block, hit the plus there, you can go down to our effects, and then let's just add a delay. So I've used the digital delay a couple of times already, so let's use the stereo space delay. We hit that there, this opens it up. Again, really cool kind of interface to deal with, very much based off of a space echo. Let's hear how that sounds. And you can obviously tweak that just to however you want to as well. Moving over, it's even got, you know, the sort of pushed sort of preamp sound that you would expect from the space echo. Let's maybe add a bit of reverb to there as well, just because. Let's add something quite crazy. Modulated large hall reverb. Double check how that's sounding. Sounds cool. Now let's add just previous to the amp, or before the amp, jump back into effects. Now the stomp box option just here, this is going to be all your sort of distortions and your fuzzes. Modulations, that's pretty standard stuff. That's going to be all your choruses and your tremolos and phasers and whatnot. Delays we've been through, reverbs we've been through, dynamics and EQ is going to be your compressors, and also a few different gates and EQ pedals. So if you do want to throw an EQ pedal into the chain as opposed to having the global EQ, or, you know, any sort of like immediate button presses to change like parameter options, you can go a bit more old school with it if you do want to. Now a plethora of wahs, and obviously the pedal shifter that we touched on there, but let's just add a distortion beforehand. Again, quite sort of notable distortions from the Tone Hall of Fame are in here, including some boosts and some kind of cool fuzzes as well, which I've not heard in some of the other ones, but let's go with the Royal Tone, which is based off the King of Tone here as well. And you've even got, you know, the options for the boost, the overdrive, and the distortion there, but let's just keep it on overdrive. Pull that gain down, volume down a bit as well. That's sounding pretty cool there. And this is one of the coolest things I feel about the Tone Master Pro and just modelers in general, is it gives you the real ability to kind of just mess around with sounds that you've maybe never, you know, wanted to experiment with or never wanted to take the dive on because, you know, pedals are expensive, going out and just buying one on a whim. Not all of us can do that. So having something like this, it just gives you the opportunity to actually kind of test some stuff out. You know, I maybe wouldn't go out and buy like a Univibe pedal. You know, that can be something that I could kick on, you know, whenever I just want that really, really warbly sound. I'll just show you how to assign your foot switches. So if we go to foot switch mode, you'll notice that all of the scribble strips are empty. And on the screen here, there's no options for anything. So if we just go to the on-off option for each one, I can start assigning the pedals to whatever scribble strip that I want it to be, or whatever button I want it to be, giving you quite quick access to whichever pedal you want to bring in and out. Now, as default, they're all just red, but again, you can change all the colors if you do really want to. But realistically, you know, that's kind of a patch just in with itself there. You know, that's granted it's a bit of a, you know, quite a sort of crazy sound, definitely, but you know, what's stopping you from bringing that out and just going kind of, you know, dry overdrive with a little bit of reverb coming from the amp as well. Now, just for argument's sake as well, I'm just going to add a bunch of different sounds to here, different effects, mostly the reverbs and delays, just because I want to see kind of where the DSP will cap out at, just to see what you could realistically add to the chain. Now, notice there that some of the amps have now kind of blacked out on there, so realistically you can still add another amp to this, just not some of the kind of more classic Fenders and some of the more high gain stuff. But we do have the Friedman and the Diesel option here. Effects wise, we're still getting full access to everything, so let's throw in some more DSP sort of heavy ones with stereo options. Again, I know I've added several reverbs and delays here, but there's no stopping you from doing that and having them at different lengths or different sort of voicings or anything as well. It's sort of, it gives you as much sort of freedom as you want to. Now we're starting to see some of the distortions kind of black out there, some of the delays as well. And can we add, we can still add a wah or a pitch shifter. Again, this is probably going to be the worst sounding patch in the world. Okay, there we go. We have maxed that out now in terms of effects and amps. We can still throw in an effects loop though, so if you do have your own pedals that you do want to throw into there, then the option is there. But what we're looking at, I mean, it's a pretty busy chain, to be fair. You can add realistically one of kind of every pedal that you would want to, or any sound, and again, set them to any of these sort of parameters and just switch between them if you want to. Now, just for fun, let's just hear how terrible that sounds. It's certainly unique, but I'd like to see what you can obviously do with the DSP that is built into this here. You might be able to make something that's a lot more exciting than that. So obviously when you're done with that, you can hit the save. You can choose which patch that's going to, and you get a proper QWERTY keyboard that pops up as well, so you can kind of call it anything that you want to, but I'm not going to sort of let my colleagues deal with that patch that I just made there. So let's just take a very quick look at the internal menus of the Tone Master Pro. You hit just the gear icon in the top there. You'll notice that there's a few options again just down the bottom. You have things like, you know, you can have your global EQ kind of retain over all the patches, which we're going to get to. There's a save prompt, which is a really handy feature because there's so many times with modelers that I've ended up accidentally going off of a patch before I've saved it, and it's just completely wiped it. So you do actually get a prompt that comes up that asks you if you want to save it. With the options to obviously change the brightness, factory reset, and information. The I/O feature here as well. This is, you know, a little bit more in depth. The Tone Master Pro does have the ability to run an XLR into it, which means you can actually run a mic through this if you do want to. So it does have phantom power. You can change the input gain. You can change, you know, like the impedance and whatnot. Really quite in-depth stuff if you do want it to be there. Even your MIDI options as well, which are cool. The footswitch settings as well, you can change whatever your presets want to be as well. You can even have a few effects up the top, then you've got your preset options there, so it gives you a lot of flexibility. Effects mode layout is just that at the moment. You've got your tap tempo and tap LED if you want that on as well for an indicator. As I mentioned, it does have Bluetooth options, so that's there if you want to pair your phone or any device to it. The global EQ, as I mentioned, we've had a bit of a kind of high-end cut on this here, which just sort of soothes some of those more high gain. You can get in there and do whatever you want to, which is absolutely great. Now the mixer option is going to be great for anybody who is using this live, because you can actually set a lot of different sort of inputs and outputs for your mixer, like, you know, which will actually determine which output it's coming out of, whatever volume they're going to be at. So if you're using headphones but also plugging this into a PA, or if you're plugging this into a computer or anything, you can adjust all those levels. Again, just another little sort of touch of flexibility for the unit. And then kind of final there as well, that is our tuner, which you can access by just pressing and holding this button here. And it's really, really bright tuner, really cool. You can access that mixer option as well just by hitting the button on your master volume there too, if you do need to get to it rather quickly. Now, in a landscape that's already dominated by a few names in the modeler industry, where does the Tone Master Pro sit in all of that? So my personal experience is that I've certainly found this unit rather fun just to kind of play with immediately. You know, the really kind of bright touch screen, the super quick experience just to sort of make a patch, and you know, certainly the sounds are absolutely fantastic. Now, of course, you know, the images and the touchscreen and whatnot, that's not anything new in this world, but certainly the sort of version that Fender have presented with this, I am finding just, you know, really fun to actually interact with. So obviously the biggest draw that I think will come from this as well is obviously the inclusion of all the proper big Fender names. Now, on launch, you know, the metal sounds that are based in this amp, you know, they're there, but they're maybe not the most flexible for anyone. So certainly for anybody who really likes that Fender sound, really wants to kind of go with the classic sort of clean sound with pedals and whatnot, this is going to be an immediate draw for you. Although I can see Fender, much like all the other brands as well, adding a lot of updates to this kind of later down the line, developing it and whatnot, so you might have some new amps and new effects kind of later down in the future. Really, the kind of mission statement is, if you're an absolute Fender fanatic and you love those kind of classic Fender tones, but you maybe haven't stepped into the world of modeling, or that's your sort of exclusive sounds that you use, then Tone Master Pro is going to be absolutely perfect for you. But what do you think? Did you like the sounds of the Tone Master Pro? Is this something that you want to check out? Let us know down in the comments, and of course, give us a like and a subscribe down there. But until next time, I've been Keiran, and this is the Fender Tone Master Pro Modeler. Have a great day.